it is if we just put our creative outlet in that way. But we'll get back to that. So sustainability has kind of become a little bit of a dirty word. It can feel a bit exhausting. It can feel a bit intimidating. How do we proceed? How do we implement that in our bars? How do we get through it? But if we look through it as a more creative perspective, and not something exhausting, more of a restriction, then we can be even more innovative. Often when we are restricted in our creative thinking, to break that barrier, we come with even more creative solutions, which is why we should kind of embrace this sustainability matter, not as a hindrance, but as a barrier that we need to break to be even more creative. Which is kind of why bars have embraced that as well. So the sustainable progress in bars have come a long way, and everybody's kind of aware. Awareness is key to move forward. If you stop a stranger on the street, or if you wake a bartender during the night and you go, what's sustainability? We already know what it kind of requires. Things like local sourcing, we will say things like, being more energy efficient, packaging, being more sustainable about packaging, and, supply chain demands, buying things in bulk, not transporting too far. So all of these things we kind of know, we kind of have a view on what sustainability is, but what can we do in the bars right now? Every industry has waste. Textile industry, any industry that has a production has waste. But our luck is our waste has flavor. So food waste is flavor waste. Basically everything that is potentially edible has flavor. And we kind of embrace that, and we could take it even further. So there's an expression that I call masters of extraction. Bartenders have now evolved not just mixing things together, having delicious beverages and mixing things together and creating good drinks. We now possess of a skill where we extract our own flavors and make our own products, which gives us immense power of tailoring flavor, but also having an outlet to save waste and using unusual ingredients. So we've come a long way. We came from cooking syrups to things like 𝗙𝗀𝘃𝗁𝗁 or 𝗙𝗀𝘃𝗁𝗁, where we extract flavors from peels with sugar or acids, to moving over to fermentation, where we're using buds and stems and off-cut pieces to ferment to create even more flavor, moving forward to vacuum distilling, vacuum infusions, and centrifuges. So we actually have a lot of technology available, and we have a lot of skills available to extract flavor, to make good drinks, and those things can be used to minimize waste, use off-cuts, and make a bigger impact sustainability. But a lot of these things can be a bit overwhelming. Modern technology, techniques can be an investment that not everybody are ready to. So what can we do right now without making a bigger investment? We need to break our barriers of traditional thinking. So we can't be stuck in our old habits. We can't be stuck in our old ways of how do we work with flavor, how do we extract. We need to have modern machines, but if we look back in time, we've always extracted flavors. We need to break those old habits. A good example is, for example, coffee. Coffee is an extraction method. We have a French press, we have mocha, we have an espresso machine. Why does that method only belong to coffee? It's basically just an extraction method. So we always think a French press is coffee, but you can put anything in a French press. You can also put anything in a mocha pot. You can make an extraction of herbs. You can put anything in an espresso machine. It's just extracting flavor with water. So if we kind of rethink traditional techniques that we already have available, then we can kind of reinvent ourselves and not be depending on modern technologies, but we can make a difference right here and now. And moving forward with that is also, when we do work with flavor extractions, we tend to focus on more of the obvious things that we do, more on the flavors that we already know. So we focus on sweet, sour, bitter, and salt, which are flavors that we know, which are mechanisms that work in our mouth. So when we do work with extractions, when we do want to save flavor, we tend to focus on, oh, how do I extract sweetness? How do I extract acidity? How do I extract salt? But we need to break that habit as well, break that barrier. We need to move beyond the obvious. So there's more to flavor than just the regular four. If we expand our horizon a little bit, we could, for example, focus on game. Game is not necessarily meat, but meaty flavors combined with umami. The depth, that could be from mushrooms, it could be from koji mold, that can be used for anything else, anything other than rice, so we can use that technique to create game and umami. We can focus on base. Basic is the opposite of sour. pH goes both ways. We don't not necessarily have to focus solely on acidity and low pH. We can also focus on high pH. So in the more alkaline environment, another thing we can work on is the minerality in flavor. So minerality as a flavor. Usually we talk about minerality in wine or in food. We go like, oh, this terroir has limestone, or has chalk, or it has calcium, or food has minerality like oysters and everything else. But minerality is a great contrast to acidity. So both of them can shine together. And if we kind of embrace minerality into the cocktail world, we can actually expand our flavor profile, and by that also utilize even more ingredients, potentially also waste ingredients. For me, I found that eggshells is a great source of minerality. Eggs are used in bars all over the world. Egg whites are used for sours, the whole eggs are used for flips, the yolks are used for eggnogs, and the eggshells are often just thrown away. Eggshells are actually a great source of calcium for any purpose, not just for flavor, but also for actual calcium. And calcium has a great minerality as a flavor. So why not use a product that bars have all over the world, save that, and then even add a new flavor profile in our cocktails? So what I do is I collect eggshells, and to make them ready, I boil them to sterilize them, and then to remove all excess gunk that's on them. Next, what I do is I bake them at a lower temperature, but not for too long. The whole purpose is not to toast them, but just to dry them completely so they're very, very brittle. And after that, you can grind them into a fine powder in however way you want. This powder is now edible, a good source of calcium that you can put in your protein shake in the morning, or you can put in your food, or just to get your calcium in your daily diet, or also use it as a flavor. I wanted to integrate this into a liquid because bartenders, we work with liquids. So I kind of moved forward to a flavor profile that I wanted to chase. So what I did is I took the eggshell calcium powder and added to 10% vinegar. Acidity and calcium are opposites. The vinegar eats the calcium and then turns into something called calcium acetate. And calcium acetate is basically a mixture between the acetic acid and calcium, so it gives this great flavor of minerality, but also a little bit of acidity. So added that to 10% vinegar, let it sit for 2 to 3 days. Most of the vinegar had eaten the calcium, but we will have some leftover residue, which is like this, the sac around the yolk. There's some other things in the egg that the vinegar won't eat, so we need to filter that. After you filter that, we actually have a clear liquid that you can reduce to make it even stronger, but you have a liquid that is mostly calcium, a little bit of acidity, and water, a great flavor for minerality. I wanted to use this calcium flavor into a cocktail that's very dear to me, which is a martini. And a martini requires a vermouth. So why not think about vermouth in a more sustainable purpose and save some more waste? I've taken some leftover champagne. We don't have leftover champagne. I usually drink most of it. But it will happen every now and then that there's leftover champagne. Instead of just chucking it away or letting it go stale, we could turn it into vermouth. So I've taken some leftover champagne, and I took the most used botanicals and some of the botanicals that I love a lot. Wormwood, which is a must in a vermouth, just like 1 gram. Some pink pepper, chamomile tea, I love drinking chamomile tea. Leftover citrus peels like grapefruit and lemon, and then of course the eggshells. All of that I grind it up. I added it to the champagne, a little bit of sugar, let it simmer, filter it, and fortifying it with some vodka to keep the clean flavor, so it becomes a fortified wine. Bottle and chill, then you have a leftover champagne vermouth. Basically, you can enjoy it as it is over ice, or use it in a martini, like I will. So this is a martini that I call the mineral martini. Where I'm using the flavors of the calcium and the vermouth. So we're going to start with some gin. In this case, I'm using a Danish-produced gin called geranium gin. A slightly floral and citric gin will carry the flavors of the minerality quite well. Next up is my vermouth, champagne vermouth. So I have 2 parts gin, 1 part vermouth. Looks like that. And lastly, I have my calcium acetate solution, and a half a part of that. It all depends on how much of the flavor you want in it, but if you combine this with vermouth, it gives it a nice minerality and a nice salty flavor. Give this a stir. And to kind of complete the martini, we needed a garnish. Normally you would give it a lemon twist or an olive, but I wanted to explore the flavor of minerality even more. So in our fridge at home, we had some leftover red miso. And miso has this great flavor profile of umami, but also some minerality. So I made a coral twill of some leftover miso by adding that with a bit of eggshell powder, some oil, some water, and making a coral twill. And here we have the coral twill. Geranium gin, champagne leftover vermouth, and calcium acetate, the mineral martini. Thank you very much. So, moving forward. Did you know that 30% of all global food waste contains of grains and bread? And now, bartenders, with our evolved techniques of extraction, we can actually help battle that food waste. And what we kind of need to do now is move beyond the bar. We're becoming good at repurposing our own waste, using our own leftover shells, our peels, our stems, our buds. But with our now, creative thinking of extracting flavor, creative thinking with, using waste, we can move beyond the bar and move into our community. Sustainability is also a lot about community and helping each other, repurposing flavor and repurposing waste. So the bar industry has evolved a lot in the last 10 years, but now we have the skill to move even further. Repurposing waste as a community. So every culture has bread, and every culture has a local community. And I come from a bread-eating country, but I see bread exist in every shape and form in every culture around the world. Where there is bread waste, which means we can make a difference by repurposing that. So I created an initiative called Rebread Society, which basically we go to local bakeries and we collect stale bread and make that into delicious beverages. Often people are unaware what to do with stale bread because it's delicious once you buy it, but after day 1, day 2, it's stale, and it's limited how many croutons you can make of stale bread. So I've come up with this initiative to kind of teach people how to repurpose stale bread. Because the biggest wasters, sadly to say it, are end consumers, so basically that's where we need to take the battle. So Rebread Society is using all sorts of stale breads. So we're making orgeat-style syrups out of pastries. We're fermenting wheat bread into a fermented, lacto-fermented kvass. The most popular one is the rye bread coffee. So, why I call it rye bread coffee is I'm using a coffee extraction method, and also I'm putting the word coffee in it, so it becomes more relatable, rather than just saying a rye bread extraction, so rye bread coffee, because it got similarity in flavor. What I do here is I take stale rye bread, specifically rye bread, and then I crumble it and put it in the oven. So what I want to do here is make it completely dry. So make it completely dry, and then at the very end, I just whack the temperature up and make it like a dark toast. And the dark toastiness creates these aromas of nuttiness, of chocolate, of things like that, that you'll also find in coffee. And after that, when it's completely dry and dark roasted, I grind it into a coffee-like powder. So you can even see that it looks like coffee. It has the smell and resemblance of coffee. Of course, you can also get flavor nuances of seeds, and you can also get flavor nuances of bread, but it does resemble coffee in the aroma. And after that, you basically have a coffee-like powder. You brew it in your favorite way. Pour-over could be a way. If you do a pour-over, it will extract faster. You have a lighter extraction. Or a French press, which you can let it sit for longer. You'll have a more stronger extraction. So that's basically a way of repurposing stale rye bread, making it into a coffee brew. So what I wanted to do is create that into a cocktail. You can drink it as it is. You can make, espresso martinis with it if you want. But I wanted to recreate kind of a memory that I have, which is every morning I eat, not every morning, but often I eat for breakfast a piece of rye bread with jam. So I wanted to create a cocktail to represent that called rye bread and jam. What I needed for that is repurposing leftover jam. Again, utilizing waste that might not be able to be used in other ways. So I take rhubarb jam that are left over in the fridge, and then I basically dilute it into a cordial. I cook it with some acids to give it a bit of more acidity, in this case some citric acid and malic acid, and then I boil it with water, dilute it, let it simmer for a bit, strain it into a rhubarb jam cordial, which is ready to drink as it is, diluted with water, or use it in a cocktail. Once I've strained that cordial out, I have some leftover solids and residue, which you can see down there, so might as well use that for a garnish as well. So I've taken that leftover residue where all the liquid is drained out, it's kind of dry, I spread it out thin on a paper sheet, on a baking sheet, and then I bake it on low temperature, around 60 degrees for 2 to 3 hours, which gives it like a leather kind of consistency, creating a fruit leather, what you see here, which gives it a great garnish purpose. So the next drink I'm going to make is the rye bread and jam. This is the rye bread coffee brew that I talked about before. I'll be using 40 mils of this. And this drink I wanted to keep quite clean to really accentuate the flavors of the rye bread and of the rhubarb cordial. So I've chosen to use the vodka. In this case, I've using Ketel One. And the reason I'm using this is it has a very clean flavor of wheat, which pairs perfectly well with the rye bread coffee brew. 40 mils of that. And then, here is the rhubarb jam cordial. Rhubarb jam, water, adjusted with a little bit of acidity. And 50 mils of this. Give this a stir. So basically, all of these techniques, anything is possible. I just happen to use a rhubarb jam, but it can be any jam you like. It can be any kind of compote that you have in your fridge. You can turn it into a syrup or a cordial that you can just dilute with water or make it into drinks, mix with tonic, whatever you want. These ideas are to repurpose any kind of leftover flavor that you have at home or in your fridge. Give this a nice stir. And this fruit leather is, you can cut it in any shape and form you want, which makes it a great garnish and also just fun to eat. So I'm just going to make a little triangle. There, put it on top. And here we have a wasted bread, saved rhubarb jam cordial cocktail called Wee Bread and Jam. There you go. Of course.
No leftovers.
No leftovers, exactly. So, talking about all of this, just to recap, just to remember that we can make an impact, is that all potential food waste is flavor waste. If you have anything that is potentially edible, don't throw it away. Use any traditional methods of extraction, and you can repurpose that as flavor. Sustainability and innovation can actually go hand in hand. Don't see it as a method of restricting yourself. See it as a new way of searching for creativity to seizing creativity. We need to break all habits, just like breaking barriers of, we can get stuck in our ways of, old ways of extracting flavor, old ways of working with flavor, but breaking those habits to expand our horizon of extraction, and which is even gives us bigger opportunity to repurpose and save more flavor. And again, to kind of capture the essence of sustainability is also involved in the community. Go beyond the bar and use our skills to help the community, to capture flavor, which kind of goes both ways, because when we do that, we also get inspiration in return to how we can add new flavor to our cocktails. It has been an absolute pleasure to be here. This is all I had. Thank you to GastroMasa for inviting me, and 𝗙𝗪𝗀𝘀𝗁𝘀𝗁. Thank you.